Thank you so much for clapping before I even begin speaking. It's very encouraging. So I got married 3 years ago. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm already off the market. It was a love marriage. We decided to do it on a winter morning in Shimla. It was a destination wedding. It was supposed to be the best day ever. Except that my mother wasn't really on board with this wedding destination nonsense. How will we get there? Ma, there are roads in Shimla. How will people get there? The roads for everyone, Ma. No one's going to come. Actually, all those who care will definitely come. Okay, but we are not serving non-veg in the wedding because it's against our customs. We are Punjabis. Our customs are built on butter chicken, Ma. It started with small issues, but then soon got really annoying. 2 days before the wedding, in Shimla, my mother threw a bomb. She's like, we're not going to do it in the day. We'll do it at night. I said, why? I said, it's tradition. I was like, the whole point of us doing a destination wedding in Shimla is that because there are mountains in Shimla. If we do the wedding at night, we won't see the mountains. My mother wasn't entirely convinced until I used the 3 golden words. The money will get wasted. And then, of course, she agreed. But by this time, I was a bit hurt. See, the thing is, my mother's always been awesome, like all mothers. And she's always obviously disagreed with every single thing I've ever said, like all mothers. But this was the most important day of my life, and I really wanted a friend beside me and not a mother. So I did the opposite of what all children do, what all Indian children are actually raised to do. I talked to her. I sat her down and I asked her, Ma, you've always been my strength. Why are you acting so irrational right now? What she told me that day remains with me till date. She said, you did engineering and then did media. I didn't say anything. You didn't do an MBA. I didn't say anything. You found a girl of your choice. I didn't say anything. She's not even a Punjabi. I didn't say anything. But today, at your wedding, I really thought it was the last time I could say something as a mother. I feel so left out since you've grown up. And I really wanted to just feel like your mother again. You know, the whole time I was so annoyed at the way my mother was interfering in my wedding. And when she told me this, I realized that it was I who was actually interfering in her son's wedding. I'd been so selfish, right? I gave her a huge hug after she told me this, and then we did every tradition that she wanted us to do. Of course, we still did the wedding in the day because otherwise the money will get wasted. When you know someone's story, you can't misunderstand them. Until I knew my mother's story, I'd put a label on her, in fact, several: irrational, annoying, interfering. But the moment she told me her side of the story, I didn't see her just as my mother, but as a human being, full of heart and soul and lots of love. And I had lots of love in return. See, that's the thing about stories. Stories fill us with empathy. They help us connect with each other. They help us understand one another. They help us become human. Human beings haven't come this far because we are the stronger animal. I mean, I'm afraid of cockroaches. But it's because we've been able to tell everything that we have learned over the years to the generations that come after in the form of stories. Right from the first cavemen who did this through graffiti in the walls. Tale by tale, we have built community and then the world. When you think of it, we are actually the sum of all the stories we have grown up on. Our morality, value systems, our understanding of good and bad, what drives us, saves us, heals us, has come from stories. From the Mahabharata giving us lessons about the greater good, to the story of the rabbit and the tortoise telling us slow and steady wins the race, to even movies. Tare Zameen Par, for example, was a movie after watching which every terrible student in India believed that it's not that I'm bad at studies, I have dyslexia. Stories have shaped a perspective. But stories are also, when you think about it, we are all individually the stories we have lived. Because without our stories, we are nothing but labels. And where stories unite us, labels divide us. I learned that the hard way. I grew up in Bahrain. When I was about 14 years old, by that time I was actually getting published in local newspapers and magazines. For some reason, they'd always write my opinion pieces along with my age. Nikhil Taneja, age 14 years. Basically, I was the shit back then. Everyone knew me and loved me. Okay, everyone knew me, at least. Because to be honest, I was the most hated kid in all of Bahrain. For some reason, everything that I would ever write would get a ton of hate, email, and letters. Yes, people physically wrote letters to tell a 14-year-old kid that he sucked. The hate sort of fell into my regular life. I started getting bullied. I remember being at a cricket match where rocks were thrown at me, and not because I was terrible at cricket. I've been at an assembly where I've had to walk from the end to the beginning because I was receiving an award, and the chant around me was boos. One day, my younger brother got bullied, and that's the day I decided that I'm going to leave Bahrain and go to India to study in my 11th and 12th. I did a semester in India, but then decided to go back because I couldn't let that be my story. On coming back, fortunately, I immediately made new friends. The reason because of that was I'd taken science, and everyone who hated me had apparently taken commerce. A few months later, a science friend of mine came up to me and said something that continues to scar me. I was very close to him, but he told me, "Hey, remember all the hate that you had got while you were here back then?" I said, "Yeah." Well, some of it was from me. My first reaction was, "Wait, you're not from commerce." And then, of course, I was shocked. I didn't know how to react. He told me, I asked him why. And he told me that he had just thought that I was a pompous asshole because I used to write my age, 14 years, along with my name everywhere. So clearly I was full of myself. But now that he knew me, he realized that I was actually a nice person and he felt bad. So he said sorry. And I told him, "Do you know that they published the age themselves?" So I had gone through months of loneliness, intense bullying and hatred, and been away from my family because who I was had been reduced to a label by someone I didn't even know. Pompous asshole. His confession did not bring my time back, but it taught me another very important lesson. When you know someone's story, you can't hate them. See, the thing about labels are very dangerous. Labels divide our world into us and them, into libtards and bhakts and feminazis and racists and misogynists and anti-nationals. Everyone's got a label at some point of time. Someone's a narcissist, someone's a pompous asshole, someone's a psycho, someone's a bitch, someone's a Justin Bieber fan, someone's a Modi supporter, or someone's gay, Muslim, or different caste, but no one is human. Labels reduce our entire complex, full lives lived into incomplete stories, into that one thing, that one opinion, or that one comment we may know about someone or have bothered to know about someone. Every one of us somewhere has got a label, I'm sure, in life that has scarred us, from a friend, from a peer, from a stranger, on the internet, from a boss, from a colleague, because no one bothered to know your entire life's story of a life that has obstacles faced, struggles overcome, heartbreaks experienced, a life of flesh, blood, and sweat, a life lived. Labels are easy, so they're attached everywhere. At home, girls are told that you are weak and boys are told you can't cry. At work, your gender may determine whether you have bias against you or not. In everyday life, people decide how to behave with you depending on your color of your skin or your religion. India, for the longest time, was known as the land of mystic snake charmers and elephants because that was the incomplete story that existed in the world and was reinforced repeatedly. Today, we are apparently slumdog millionaires. Are we? No, we are not. We are so much more than that. Stories are how you overcome labels. A true act of courage in the deeply divided world we live in today is to listen to the stories of those unlike us. Because when you listen, you recognize that there are many truths out there that are not similar to your own, that may be contradictory, but that does not mean it can be denied. When you listen to someone's story, you cannot invalidate them. I've been a teacher to mass media students for 7 years. They're 19-year-old kids in the final year of college. They've all come from eclectic background. Every batch has had different students of very, very strong opinions, which are vehemently different from each other. They all have their cliques and circles, and clearly they're judgmental about hanging out with anyone outside of them because they're 19. They're not going to hang with everybody. What I did was I started something called the Kindness Project. I asked my students, every one of them who had a label attached on them, inevitably from the day they started college, to come up in the last class in my final project and talk about that one honest thing that would help their peers understand them better. In return, they would get the respect and the platform of being heard. what I thought would be a sweet project that would help bring the students together ended up becoming a cathartic act of sharing truths that the world did not have time for. The truth of one student was being gay but belonging to a religion that thought it was a sin. The truth of another student was rejecting the hijab because she believed her God is going to love her irrespective. Another student was working really hard because she'd seen domestic abuse at home and she wanted to change her mother's story. Another student was working day and night so that his father would once see him and tell him that he loves him. A frantic, restless, brilliant mind had this problem where he would interject and intervene with facts and figures in class and drive everyone insane in trying to prove his point repeatedly. He was liked but never understood. I could not have imagined what his story would be until his turn came up in the project. He started by revealing that his father was a patriarch who treated his wife and daughter poorly, angrily, and sometimes aggressively. His son, this kid, when he was younger, would respond with rage at his father because he couldn't see his loved ones being mistreated. But then he decided one day that he cannot be angry anymore because he did not want to turn into his father. So he started reading voraciously. He started learning and gaining knowledge as much as he could, so that the next time his father would be angry, instead of responding to him with rage, he would respond to him with stories, news, facts, and figures that would prove to his father that what he thought was a way of life wasn't. That the world wasn't as mean, as angry, and as misogynist as he thought. He fought his father's patriarchy with empathetic ideologies because he wanted to see that change in the world and because he now knew that it existed. And that's why he was well-read and brilliant. His story was rejecting the truth that he was born with and creating a new truth and a new world of his own where men and women are equal. None of these students needed to share the uncomfortable truths that they eventually did, but every one of them chose to talk about their deepest truths. And the reason for that is that when you open up about your story, it is the most cathartic and empowering act that you can do. The students, over the years, this class became a safe space where the students spoke about a variety of difficult things. They came out in front of the other students about abuse, about depression, about sexuality, and every one of them received love, empathy, compassion, support, and enormous number of hugs. And every one of them received it irrespective of their caste, color, background, religion. When you know someone's story, you can't be unkind to them. This project changed my life. It taught me courage, it taught me resilience, it taught me strength, and it made me and every other student who was part of it realize that we are not alone in this. We are in this together. And that no matter what we think of someone as outside, we don't know the kind of pain that they're dealing with. The problem with the world today is one of apathy. We are more connected right now than ever before in the world's entire history, and yet we are more disconnected with each other as a people. We have never been more disconnected than ever before. We love projecting the stories of our lives as awesome and amazing and #lit online. But the real stories of what we are going through offline, we don't even talk about it. So what's really happening? Our generation is facing more mental health problems than any generation before this. Because while we are constantly in touch with each other, we have stopped talking to each other and we have completely stopped listening. This project, though, has given me hope. It taught me that we still have it in us to overcome the challenges thrown at us if we listen to the stories that people have lived. The Kindness Project taught me about that stories empower, stories humanize, stories empathize, and stories make us kind. I believe every one of us today in the world has a choice that we are faced with. We can either let incomplete stories and labels divide us, or we can talk, we can share our stories. We can rebuild the world that we grew up in, a world where we used to dress up on Diwali and Eid and go to neighbors and friends to share our stories and share sweets. We would talk to people on planes and trains, and we would spend hours with our grandparents listening to their tales that they made up. Where we would not use our phone as a crutch to avoid social contact, but when we would ask someone, "How are you?" we would actually mean it. All of us today have a choice. And that choice is really evident. When you know someone's story, you can't be angry about it. Because when you encounter someone unlike you and you listen to them, you realize that you may not know the story that they have lived so far. And then you engage instead of enraging. So when you are not angry, there is no pain. When there is no pain, there is healing. When there is healing, the world becomes a kinder place. Thank you so much.